Steam Early Access is a thing I imagine most people are familiar with at this point. I think it's generally a great tool for developers and gamers. Developers can get some money to help continue working on their game, and the players can share bugs they find or offer suggestions to help improve the game. The overall result of early access games is a mixed bag. There have been some great successes, like Don't Starve, Subnautica, Slime Rancher, and 20xDX, and if you don't pronounce it that way, you're wrong. But there have been some pretty big messes too, like Space-Based DF9, Towns, Acropolis, and The War Z. Just search early access disasters or failures if you want to know more about those. But the reason I'm bringing all this up is because you always need to be a little bit cautious about early access games. And the game I'm talking about today is in early access. Well, it might not be as you're watching this, but I finished writing this on November 5th, recorded the audio on November 6th, and the video came out on November 7th. And recently there was an update that suggested the game will exit early access soon. Long-winded intro, I know, but today I'm talking about why I love Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire is a roguelike dungeon crawler game, and the combat is based on cards and deck building. Your goal, big shocker here, is to slay the Spire. To begin, currently, you select one of 3 characters. Well, if you're starting out for the first time, you select one of 1 characters, the Ironclad. The other characters are unlocked after you complete a run with the previous one. The Ironclad is a good place to start out, because while this character can have complicated decks, it also has some of the simplest. And if you don't have a plan for your deck, as is likely with most new players, you can still fare pretty well compared to the other characters. The Ironclad also starts with a relic that heals you after each combat, making it a bit easier to stay alive. Each character is unique, and I feel a little more complex than the previous one. The Ironclad has the most straightforward damage and defense cards, with some cards that inflict self-damage or add negative cards to your draw pile. The Silent is more about smaller damage, high card counts, damage over time, debuffs, and discarding your own cards. The Defect is, he has orbs, and he's my favorite. So, I've mentioned deck building and cards a lot, but not exactly how that works in this game. Every character has a standard starting deck, including strikes and defends, and some character-specific cards. There are 3 types of cards: attacks, skills, and powers. Attacks are your damage-dealing cards. Some have extra effects or conditions, but all hurt your foes. Skills apply buffs to you, debuffs to the enemy, draw some more cards, or adds block, which blocks incoming damage until your next turn. Powers add bonuses to your character for the duration of the combat. These may take effect every turn, or just when certain conditions are met. As you progress through the game, you have an opportunity to add cards to your deck. You can purchase them from the merchant, find some in random events, and get to choose from one of 3 cards as a reward from each combat. Combat is where you gain most of your cards. The option between these 3 cards will help you build the deck. As you'll play, you'll find what cards work well together, and which cards create the kind of deck you want to use. For instance, the Ironclad can find a card called Perfected Strike. It becomes more powerful the more cards that you have in your deck that have the word strike in them. So, you might want to grab those and every card that boosts its damage for huge hits. The Ironclad also has a card, Barricade. It will have your block persist through turns, and with the right cards, this can make you nearly impervious to damage. There are other synergies that lead to interesting strategies with the Ironclad and the other characters, but I'll leave those for you to discover. To get to these merchants and fights and random events, you travel through the Spire by picking paths that lead to the boss. Along these paths, you'll run into 6 different rooms: basic combat, elite combat, treasures, merchants, bonfires, and mystery rooms. Basic combat is simple enough. You fight a regular set of enemies and are rewarded with a choice of cards, some gold, and sometimes a potion. Elite combat is just a much tougher set of enemies that adds a relic to your rewards. I'll mention relics soon. Treasures also give you a relic, and often some gold. Merchants are just shops where you can buy potions, relics, cards, or remove a card from your deck. The mystery room can be any of the previously mentioned rooms, or a random event where you're given options that can lead to rewards. The bonfires are just rooms where you can rest to regain health, or upgrade your cards. Oh, and a boss fight is just a boss fight, you know how those work. Now going back to the relics, these are items that provide you bonuses. These can be things like dealing 3 damage to all enemies at the start of every turn, cheaper prices at the shop and the merchant never runs out of items, or just you gain more max health. There are unique relics for defeating elite enemies, special random encounters, and bosses. Bosses drop 3 relics that you can choose between, and these are all very powerful, but usually have some sort of negative side effect. This brings me to something great about this game: choices. You can choose to follow whatever path you'd like to reach the bosses. You can choose between 3 cards when they are your rewards. You can even choose to ignore rewards entirely. This is important, because sometimes you might come across a set of cards you don't want to add to your deck, or you might go to a mystery room that you find has an event that will hurt you. You can just choose to ignore it and leave. This game is almost entirely RNG based, but these kinds of options really make it feel like that RNG doesn't screw you over. The game feels very fair. That doesn't mean it's super easy either. Definitely provides a challenge. I know I didn't slay the Spire on my first attempt, but that's okay because every attempt gives you points towards unlocking new relics and cards. Each character has a set number of unlocks, so if you want everything, you've got to play them all. Beyond all this, by completing one successful run, you unlock a daily climb, which is a special challenge with a set character and 3 modifiers, and, unsurprisingly, changes daily. The nice thing with this is you can attempt it as many times as you'd like, rather than only having one shot and then you have to wait another day, like some other games. You can also play Ascensions, which make the standard game more difficult. These do things like adding more elites, making enemies do more damage, and just stuff like that. Each run is pretty short as well. I take my time while playing and I average about 50 minutes on a successful run. But if that's something you don't have time for, you can also save your game at nearly any point and jump back in whenever. The game has also been consistently updated on a weekly schedule, which is a wonderful thing to see in early access. We have tons of news from the developers, and we can see that it obviously wasn't abandoned at any point. That's Slay the Spire. This game has simple mechanics that are easy to get a grasp on quickly, but the game has a lot of complexities while learning what cards work well together and what kind of powerful decks you can build. There are tons of choices to make on each run, which balances out the RNG, making the game feel very fair. There's tons of replayability with the Ascensions on the normal game and the daily runs, or maybe you just have a friend who you want to stay ahead of on your total score. I really think this game is the best deck-building roguelike game out there right now. About the only complaint I have about this game is that the music is kinda generic. It sounds a little bit like I'm in a Harry Potter movie. I guess this isn't bad, but it doesn't tickle my fancy. If you like card games and roguelikes, you really can't go wrong with this one. Plus, I don't think there's much risk in picking this up in the early access stages of the game. It's highly likely to be finished, and has been a blast since the first day I played it. So, this is a hearty recommendation to everyone to play this game. Okay guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my video, and as always, if you did, please share it around. I really do appreciate every share, wherever you do. Also, do the YouTube junk, like, comment, subscribe. I'm trying out a new ending thing, let me know what you think. Also, here's a thing. I've been making these videos for about a year now, and my next video will be my 12th video. That's pretty neat, I guess. I don't have anything special planned for that, just another game I love. So, join me then when we will get ruined. I feel like it should be really obvious about what game is coming up with a hint like that.